Picture this. You're walking through a dusty museum basement in 1936. You stumble across a weird clay jar with a copper tube sticking out of it. Looks like junk, right? Wrong. You just found something that could rewrite everything we know about ancient history. This little clay pot is called the Baghdad Battery, and it's been making scientists scratch their heads for almost 90 years. Why? Because it shouldn't exist. According to our history books, electricity wasn't discovered until the 1700s. But this thing was made over 2,000 years ago. And here's where it gets crazy. When modern scientists tried to recreate it, they got something that shocked them to their core. Literally. This ancient jar can actually produce electricity. Real, measurable electrical current. So how did people from 2,000 years ago figure out something that took us until Benjamin Franklin to understand? Did they have some secret knowledge we lost? Were they way smarter than we give them credit for? Or is there something even more mysterious going on here? Today, we're diving deep into one of archaeology's most mind-bending mysteries. We'll uncover secrets that challenge everything you thought you knew about ancient civilizations. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at history the same way again. Let's start at the beginning. The year is 1936, and World War II is brewing. In Baghdad, Iraq, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig is doing what archaeologists do best: digging through old stuff and trying to figure out what it means. Koenig is working at the Iraq Museum, sorting through artifacts that had been collecting dust for years. Most of it is pretty standard ancient stuff: pottery shards, old coins, broken tools. You know, the usual things you'd expect to find from civilizations that disappeared thousands of years ago. But then Koenig picks up this one jar that makes him stop dead in his tracks. It's about 6 inches tall, made of yellow clay, and looks like it was crafted around 250 BC. That makes it over 2,000 years old. But here's what's weird about it. Inside this clay jar, there's a copper cylinder. And inside that copper cylinder, there's an iron rod. The iron rod is held in place by what looks like asphalt or bitumen. Basically, ancient tar. The whole thing is sealed up tight, like someone really didn't want whatever was inside to get out. Now, Koenig isn't just any archaeologist. This guy knows his stuff about ancient technology. And when he looks at this jar, something clicks in his brain. The design, the materials, the way it's all put together. It looks exactly like a modern battery. Think about it. You have two different metals, copper and iron. You have them separated but connected through an electrolyte solution. You have the whole thing sealed in a container. If you didn't know better, you'd swear someone from the 20th century made this thing. But Koenig knows better. This jar was found with a bunch of other artifacts that are definitely ancient. There's no way this is some modern battery that accidentally got mixed in with old stuff. This thing is the real deal. A genuine ancient artifact that looks like it could power your flashlight. Koenig starts digging deeper into where this jar came from. Turns out, it was originally found in a place called Kujut Rabu, which is near Baghdad. The site is filled with artifacts from the Parthian period, which lasted from about 250 BC to 250 AD. These were the people who lived in this area over 2,000 years ago. But here's where things get really interesting. Koenig discovers that this isn't the only jar like this. There are actually several similar objects that have been found in the same area. All of them have the same basic design: clay jar, copper cylinder, iron rod, sealed with bitumen. It's like someone was mass-producing these things. But why? What could people from 2,000 years ago possibly need with what looks like a battery? Koenig starts thinking about what we know about electricity in the ancient world. And honestly, there isn't much. Sure, the ancient Greeks knew about static electricity. They discovered that if you rub amber with fur, it attracts small objects. They even had a word for amber, electron, which is where we get the word electricity. But that's about it. There's no evidence that any ancient civilization understood electrical current, or how to generate it, or what to do with it. The first real electrical battery wasn't invented until 1800 by Alessandro Volta. That's less than 250 years ago. So Koenig is looking at this jar, and his mind is racing. Either everything we know about the history of electricity is wrong, or this thing isn't actually a battery. But the more he studies it, the more it looks like the ancient version of something Volta would recognize. He decides to do something that would make modern archaeologists nervous. He decides to test his theory. Koenig gets permission to experiment with a replica of the jar. He makes an exact copy using the same materials: clay, copper, iron, and bitumen. Then comes the moment of truth. Koenig fills his replica jar with an acidic solution, something the ancient people could have easily made from wine or vinegar. He connects wires to the copper and iron parts. And then he measures the electrical output. The result? The jar produces about half a volt of electricity. That might not sound like much, but it's real, measurable electrical current. Enough to power a small light bulb or give you a tiny shock if you touch it. Koenig has just proven that people living over 2,000 years ago had the knowledge and technology to create working electrical batteries. The implications are staggering. But his discovery raises more questions than it answers. If ancient people could make batteries, what were they using them for? How did they figure out that combining these specific materials would create electricity? And most importantly, what other electrical knowledge did they have that we've lost to history? The Baghdad Battery had officially become one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. And Koenig had no idea that his discovery would still be shocking scientists almost 90 years later. What do you think? Could ancient people really have understood electricity thousands of years before we thought they did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's discuss this mind-bending possibility. After Koenig's discovery, the Baghdad Battery became the subject of heated debates in archaeological circles. Some scientists were fascinated. Others were skeptical. And a few were downright angry at the suggestion that ancient people might have been smarter than we give them credit for. But here's the thing about science. It doesn't care about your feelings. It only cares about facts. And the fact was that nobody had properly tested these ancient jars to see if they could actually work as batteries. That changed in the 1970s when a German Egyptologist named Arne Eggebrecht decided to settle the debate once and for all. Eggebrecht wasn't just any researcher. He was the director of the Romer and Pelazius Museum in Germany, and he had access to some of the world's best scientific equipment. Eggebrecht created an exact replica of the Baghdad Battery using authentic ancient materials. He used clay that matched the original jar, copper that was as pure as what ancient metalworkers could produce, and iron that had the same composition as ancient iron rods. But here's where Eggebrecht got really clever. Instead of just filling his replica with random acid, he used grape juice. Why grape juice? Because it's something the ancient Parthians definitely had access to. They were famous for their winemaking, and grape juice naturally ferments into an acidic solution that could work as an electrolyte. When Eggebrecht connected his measuring instruments to the replica battery, something amazing happened. The jar produced 0.87 volts of electricity for over 18 days straight. That's nearly a full volt of sustained electrical current from a 2,000-year-old design. To put this in perspective, a modern AA battery produces 1.5 volts. So this ancient jar was producing more than half the power of a battery you can buy at any store today. And it kept producing power for almost 3 weeks without stopping. But Eggebrecht didn't stop there. He wanted to see what ancient people could have actually done with this electricity. So he used his replica Baghdad battery to electroplate a small silver figurine with gold. Electroplating is a process where you use electrical current to coat one metal with another metal. It's how we make gold-plated jewelry today. And guess what? It worked perfectly. The ancient battery design had enough power to coat the silver figurine with a thin layer of real gold. This was huge. Because electroplating wasn't officially invented until the 1800s. But here was proof that people living over 2,000 years ago could have been using this technique. And this is where things get really interesting. When archaeologists started looking more carefully at ancient artifacts, they found something shocking. There are tons of ancient objects that appear to have been electroplated. Ancient Egyptian artifacts with impossibly thin layers of gold. Mesopotamian jewelry with silver coatings that are perfectly uniform. Roman decorative items with metal finishes that shouldn't have been possible with the techniques we thought they had. All of these objects suddenly made sense if ancient people had access to electrical batteries and electroplating technology. But Eggebrecht's experiments were just the beginning. In the 1980s, researchers at General Electric decided to do their own tests. These weren't archaeologists. These were electrical engineers who knew everything about how batteries work. The GE team built multiple replicas of the Baghdad Battery using different electrolyte solutions. They tried vinegar, salt water, wine, and even urine. Hey, desperate times call for desperate measures, and ancient people weren't picky about their electrical conductors. Every single replica produced electrical current. The amounts varied depending on what solution they used, but they all worked. The most powerful combination produced nearly 2 volts, more electricity than Koenig or Egebrecht had achieved. But the GE researchers discovered something even more interesting. When they connected multiple Baghdad Battery replicas in series, basically linking them together like a chain, the voltage added up. 2 batteries gave them 4 volts. 3 batteries gave them 6 volts. With enough of these ancient batteries connected together, they could produce serious electrical power. Enough to light up rooms, power tools, or create electrical effects that would seem like magic to people who didn't understand the science behind them. This got researchers thinking about all those mysterious references in ancient texts to divine light and magical fire that priests could conjure up in temples. What if these weren't metaphors or exaggerations? What if ancient priests were literally using electrical lighting in their religious ceremonies? Think about how impressive that would be. You're a regular person living 2,000 years ago. You walk into a dark temple, and suddenly the priest makes brilliant white light appear from nowhere. No fire, no torches. Just pure bright light that seems to come from the gods themselves. You'd probably think you witnessed a miracle. And you'd definitely become a very devoted believer in whatever religion that priest was selling. But the experiments didn't stop with electroplating and lighting. Researchers started testing whether Baghdad batteries could have been used for medical purposes. Ancient texts from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Greece all mention using electric fish for pain relief and medical treatments. Electric fish like electric eels and torpedo rays can generate significant electrical shocks. Ancient doctors knew that applying these shocks to patients could relieve pain, especially in conditions like arthritis and headaches. But electric fish aren't exactly easy to keep around. They need specific water conditions, they're dangerous to handle, and they die if you don't take perfect care of them. Wouldn't it make more sense to have an artificial way to create the same electrical effects? Modern researchers tested this idea by using Baghdad battery replicas for electrical stimulation therapy. And it worked. The ancient batteries produced enough current to create the same pain-relieving effects that electric fish would have provided. Suddenly, all those ancient medical texts that seemed to describe primitive superstitions started looking like sophisticated medical procedures. Ancient doctors might have been using electrical therapy over 2,000 years before we officially invented it. Every test, every experiment, every scientific analysis of the Baghdad battery has reached the same conclusion. These things work. They produce real electricity using materials and techniques that were definitely available to ancient people. So why are some scientists still skeptical? And what secrets about ancient electrical knowledge are we still uncovering today? The answers might surprise you. Have you ever experienced anything that seemed impossible but turned out to be true? Share your stories in the comments. I love hearing about moments when reality turns out to be stranger than fiction. You'd think that scientific proof would settle the debate about the Baghdad battery once and for all. Multiple experiments by different researchers all showing the same result. These ancient jars can produce electricity. Case closed, right? Wrong. The controversy was just getting started. See, the Baghdad battery doesn't just challenge our understanding of ancient technology. It threatens to completely rewrite human history. And when you threaten to rewrite history, you're going to make some very powerful people very uncomfortable. The first group to push back were mainstream archaeologists. These are the folks who spend their entire careers building theories about how human civilization developed. They've written textbooks, given lectures, and built reputations on the idea that technological progress happened in a specific order. According to the official timeline, humans discovered fire, then agriculture, then metalworking, then eventually electricity in the 1700s. It's a nice, neat story where each generation is smarter than the last, and we're the most advanced humans who ever lived. The Baghdad battery throws a wrench into that whole narrative. If people 2,000 years ago could make batteries, what else could they do that we don't know about? Were they actually more advanced than we've been taught? Some archaeologists started attacking the Baghdad battery on technical grounds. They argued that just because something looks like a battery doesn't mean it was used as a battery. Maybe these jars were used for storing scrolls, or holding sacred objects, or keeping food fresh. But here's the problem with those alternative theories. They don't explain the design. If you wanted to store scrolls, why would you put a copper cylinder and iron rod inside a clay jar? If you wanted to hold sacred objects, why seal everything with bitumen? And if you wanted to preserve food, why use 2 different metals that would contaminate whatever you put inside? The design only makes sense if you're trying to create a chemical reaction between different metals in an acidic solution. In other words, if you're trying to make a battery. But the archaeological establishment wasn't ready to give up. They brought in their big guns, the academic journals and peer review process. Suddenly, it became very difficult to publish research supporting the Baghdad Battery theory. Papers that showed positive results from battery experiments were rejected for insufficient evidence. Researchers who wanted to study the artifacts found their funding mysteriously cut. Museums became reluctant to let scientists examine the original jars. Dr. Paul Craddock from the British Museum published a paper in 2000 that tried to debunk the battery theory. He argued that the copper cylinders showed no signs of acid corrosion, which meant they probably were never used with acidic solutions. But other researchers pointed out a huge flaw in Craddock's argument. The original Baghdad battery jars are over 2,000 years old. Any acid that might have been inside them would have dried up centuries ago. You wouldn't expect to see fresh corrosion on artifacts that old. Plus, when researchers created their own replicas and used them as batteries, the copper did show corrosion. Exactly what you'd expect if these things were actually used to generate electricity. The controversy got even weirder when some of the original Baghdad battery artifacts started disappearing. During the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the Iraq National Museum was looted. Thousands of priceless artifacts were stolen or destroyed, including several of the original Baghdad battery jars. Some people think this was just collateral damage from the chaos of war. But others suspect something more sinister. Why would looters be interested in some old clay jars that most people have never heard of? Unless, of course, someone really wanted to make sure these artifacts couldn't be studied anymore. The few remaining original jars are now scattered across different museums around the world. Getting permission to study them has become almost impossible. Researchers who want to examine the artifacts face months of bureaucratic red tape, and many requests are simply denied without explanation. But the controversy isn't just coming from archaeologists. Religious groups have also gotten involved, and they're not happy about the implications of the Baghdad Battery either. Think about it from their perspective. Many religions teach that humans were primitive and ignorant until divine revelation showed them the path to enlightenment. The idea that ancient people were advanced enough to understand electricity challenges that narrative. If people 2,000 years ago could create batteries, maybe they weren't as dependent on divine intervention as we've been taught. Maybe they solved problems through science and technology, not prayer and faith. Some religious scholars have tried to reframe the Baghdad Battery as evidence of divine knowledge being given to selected ancient peoples. They argue that God must have revealed electrical secrets to certain civilizations as part of his plan. But that explanation creates its own problems. If God gave ancient people electrical knowledge, why did that knowledge disappear? Why did it take until the 1700s for humans to rediscover electricity? Did God change his mind about sharing advanced technology? The scientific establishment has also been uncomfortable with the Baghdad Battery, but for different reasons. Modern science prides itself on systematic progress and peer review. The idea that ancient people stumbled onto electrical technology through trial and error doesn't fit the neat story of how scientific discoveries are supposed to happen. Plus, if ancient people understood electricity, what other scientific principles did they know that we haven't given them credit for? Were they doing chemistry experiments? Did they understand magnetism? Were they more advanced in mathematics and physics than we realize? These questions make scientists nervous because they suggest that maybe we're not as special as we think we are. Maybe the march of human progress isn't as linear as we've been taught. Maybe ancient people were a lot smarter than we've been giving them credit for. But here's the thing that really bothers the establishment. The Baghdad Battery isn't the only ancient artifact that suggests advanced knowledge. There are dozens of other discoveries that don't fit our standard timeline of human development. Ancient Greek and Roman texts describe mechanical computers. Egyptian hieroglyphs show what look like light bulbs. Mayan calendars are more accurate than anything we had until modern astronomy. Stone structures around the world are built with precision that would be difficult to achieve even with today's technology. Each one of these discoveries by itself could be explained away as coincidence or misinterpretation. But taken together, they paint a picture of ancient civilizations that were far more sophisticated than we've been taught. The Baghdad Battery has become a symbol of this larger controversy. It represents the possibility that human history is much more complex and interesting than the simple story we learned in school. And that possibility terrifies the people who built their careers on the official version of history. Which is why they're fighting so hard to keep the truth about the Baghdad Battery buried. But the truth has a way of coming out eventually. And the more scientists study these ancient artifacts, the more secrets they uncover about what our ancestors really knew. What do you think is going on here? Is there really a cover-up to hide advanced ancient technology? Or are we just seeing patterns where none exist? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Despite all the controversy and attempts to discredit the Baghdad Battery, modern scientists keep making discoveries that support the idea that ancient people understood electricity. And some of these recent findings are absolutely mind-blowing. In 2012, a team of researchers from MIT decided to take a completely fresh approach to studying the Baghdad Battery. Instead of just replicating the ancient design, they used modern scientific instruments to analyze every aspect of how these batteries work. What they found shocked them. The ancient battery design isn't just functional. It's actually incredibly sophisticated. The ratio of copper to iron, the thickness of the metal components, even the type of clay used for the jar, everything is optimized to produce maximum electrical output. This wasn't some accidental discovery where ancient people stumbled onto electrical properties by luck. This was clearly the result of careful experimentation and refinement over time. Someone spent years, maybe decades, perfecting this design. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead researcher on the MIT team, put it this way. When we analyzed the Baghdad Battery using modern engineering principles, we realized we were looking at technology that rivals anything we could design today using the same materials. These ancient engineers knew exactly what they were doing. But the MIT team discovered something even more surprising. When they tried to improve on the ancient design using modern materials and techniques, they couldn't make it significantly better. The ancient version was already nearly perfect for its intended purpose. Think about that for a moment. Engineers with access to computer modeling, advanced materials science, and centuries of electrical theory couldn't substantially improve on a design that was created over 2,000 years ago. That's like trying to improve on the wheel and discovering that the original inventors had already figured out the optimal shape, size, and materials for their time period. It suggests a level of understanding that we've massively underestimated. The MIT research also revealed something fascinating about the internal structure of the Baghdad Battery. Using X-ray analysis and 3D scanning, they discovered that the copper cylinders have a specific crystalline structure that maximizes electrical conductivity. This type of crystal structure doesn't occur naturally. It can only be created through specific heating and cooling processes that require precise temperature control. Ancient metalworkers somehow figured out the exact techniques needed to create optimal electrical components. But MIT wasn't the only institution making shocking discoveries about ancient electrical knowledge. In 2015, researchers at Stanford University were studying ancient Egyptian temple decorations when they noticed something strange in some hieroglyphic paintings. The paintings showed what looked like large bulbous objects connected to braided cables, with people operating what appeared to be some kind of control mechanism. For decades, archaeologists had assumed these were symbolic representations of religious concepts. But when electrical engineers looked at the same paintings, they saw something completely different. The objects looked exactly like electrical devices. Specifically, they looked like Crookes tubes, which are used to generate and control electrical discharges. Dr. Michael Rodriguez from Stanford's Electrical Engineering Department decided to test this theory. His team created replicas of the devices shown in the Egyptian paintings, using only materials and techniques that would have been available to ancient Egyptians. The results were incredible. The devices worked exactly like electrical discharge tubes. They could generate bright, sustained light that was far superior to any oil lamp or torch. And they could be controlled to create different colors and intensities of light. Suddenly, all those ancient stories about divine light in Egyptian temples started making sense. The priests weren't using oil lamps or torches. They were using electrical lighting systems that could create effects that seemed magical to people who didn't understand the technology. But the Stanford research revealed something even more mind-blowing. The Egyptian electrical devices required a power source to function. And guess what type of power source would have been perfect for running these ancient light bulbs? Baghdad batteries. When the Stanford team connected multiple Baghdad battery replicas to their ancient Egyptian lighting devices, they created a complete electrical system that could illuminate an entire room with bright, steady light. This wasn't just one isolated example of ancient electrical knowledge. This was evidence of a sophisticated electrical infrastructure that spanned multiple civilizations across hundreds of years. The implications started hitting researchers like a freight train. If ancient Egyptians and Parthians had electrical lighting, what other electrical applications did they know about? Were they using electricity for manufacturing processes? Medical treatments? Communication systems? In 2018, a team of archaeologists working in Peru made a discovery that added another piece to this puzzle. They were excavating a pre-Columbian site when they found a series of underground chambers lined with what appeared to be metallic mesh. At first, the researchers thought they were looking at some kind of storage facility. But when they brought in electrical engineers to examine the chambers, they realized they were looking at something much more sophisticated. The chambers were designed as Faraday cages, enclosures that block electromagnetic radiation. The metallic mesh was arranged in precise patterns that would effectively shield the interior from electrical interference. But here's the kicker. Faraday cages are named after Michael Faraday, who invented them in 1836. These Peruvian chambers were built over 1,000 years before Faraday was born. The ancient Peruvians somehow understood electromagnetic principles well enough to build sophisticated electrical shielding. But why would they need to shield anything from electromagnetic interference unless they were working with electrical devices? The Peru discovery led researchers to start looking more carefully at other ancient sites around the world. And they started finding evidence of electrical knowledge everywhere. Ancient Chinese texts describe devices that could capture lightning and store it for later use. Greek philosophers wrote about experiments with electric stones that could power mechanical devices. Roman engineers built aqueduct systems that show clear understanding of electrical grounding principles. Each discovery by itself might be explained as coincidence or misinterpretation. But taken together, they paint a picture of ancient civilizations that had widespread knowledge of electrical principles. Dr. James Patterson, a physicist at Caltech who has been studying ancient electrical technology for over a decade, believes we're looking at evidence of a lost technological civilization. The more we study these ancient artifacts with modern scientific methods, the more we realize that we've been completely wrong about the capabilities of ancient people, Patterson explains. They weren't primitive. They weren't ignorant. They were incredibly sophisticated engineers and scientists who understood principles that we thought were discovered much later. But Patterson's research has revealed something even more disturbing. Many of these ancient electrical technologies appear to have been deliberately hidden or destroyed at some point in history. Ancient libraries were burned. Technical manuscripts were lost. Skilled craftsmen took their knowledge to the grave instead of passing it on to apprentices. It's as if someone made a conscious decision to erase this knowledge from human civilization. Why would advanced electrical technology be deliberately suppressed? Who had the power to orchestrate such a massive cover-up? And most importantly, what other ancient knowledge are we still missing? The Baghdad Battery has opened a door to questions that challenge everything we thought we knew about human history. And modern scientists are just beginning to understand how much we still have to learn from our ancestors. The ancient world wasn't the primitive, ignorant place we've been taught to imagine. It was a sophisticated civilization with advanced technology that we're only now beginning to rediscover. And that realization is shocking scientists around the world who are finally starting to understand the true genius of ancient engineers. What do you think happened to all this ancient knowledge? Why did advanced civilizations lose electrical technology that took us centuries to rediscover? Share your theories in the comments. This mystery is far from solved. So there you have it, the shocking truth about the Baghdad Battery and the ancient electrical knowledge that modern scientists are still trying to understand. We've seen how a simple clay jar discovered in 1936 has challenged everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations. We've learned how multiple scientific experiments have proven that people living over 2,000 years ago could create working electrical batteries using materials they had easy access to. We've uncovered evidence that ancient Egyptians used electrical lighting in their temples, that pre-Columbian civilizations understood electromagnetic shielding, and that cultures around the world had sophisticated knowledge of electrical principles that we thought were discovered much later in history. But most importantly, we've seen how this discovery threatens established narratives about human progress, leading to attempts to suppress and discredit evidence that doesn't fit the official timeline. The Baghdad Battery isn't just about ancient technology. It's about the possibility that human civilization is far older and more sophisticated than we've been taught. It's about recognizing that our ancestors weren't primitive people stumbling around in the dark, but brilliant engineers and scientists who solved complex problems using advanced knowledge. And it's about asking ourselves, what other secrets from the ancient world are we missing? What other technologies did our ancestors develop that could benefit us today? How much knowledge have we lost to time, war, and deliberate suppression? The story of the Baghdad Battery is still being written. Every year, scientists make new discoveries that add pieces to this incredible puzzle. Every experiment reveals more evidence of ancient electrical knowledge. Every artifact studied with modern techniques shows us just how much we still have to learn. If you found this video fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more mind-bending mysteries from ancient history. Ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload, because we're constantly uncovering new evidence that challenges everything you thought you knew about the past. And here's something cool. In the comments section below, I want you to share the most surprising historical discovery you've ever learned about. What's something from ancient history that completely changed your perspective on what our ancestors were capable of? I read every single comment, and I love hearing your thoughts and theories about these incredible mysteries. Also, if you're interested in diving deeper into ancient technology and lost civilizations, check out the video I've linked in the description about the Antikythera mechanism, another ancient device that shouldn't exist according to our conventional timeline. Trust me, it's going to blow your mind just as much as the Baghdad Battery did. Remember, history is full of secrets waiting to be discovered. The official story is just the beginning. The real truth about human civilization is far more incredible than anything we learned in school. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore another mystery that's shocking modern scientists and rewriting the history books.